Hi guys, in this video we're going to be looking at two albums and it'll be down to you to decide which one is better. Diabolical Conquest by Incantation or Blood Oath by Suffocation, and we're going to start right now. So Diabolical Conquest by Incantation, this is one of those relatively rare albums that I cannot find a single fault with. What you must also know is that I'm relatively easy to please, and I always judge albums by their aim in achieving their aim. But with this album, that I judge with other albums, or even alone itself, is a momentous achievement in metal history. Named as Incantation's best album, and it's a statement that is very hard to refute. Every song is classic, every riff is killer, and not a single moment of this album can be categorized as filler. All of it is stunning and will hold your attention. The guitars are basically black metal guitars, and they do not sound bad in any way, even though they have been tuned down a bit. But they still retain the same fuzz, rawness, and harshness sounding overtones. The bass is nicely layered into the guitar work, by the way, and the drums still stand out as totally different and are easy to listen to. And the vocals are deep, but not so gurgly as pure Craig pillar driven insanity, surprisingly not delivered by Craig. But this guy does a good job as well, even if his voice is a little bit different than the original, and judging from the vocal patterns, intended singer. And of course he still stayed with the sound of the old school American death metal, sounding more like a polished version of such bands like Goraphobia, Immolation, Rotrevor, with a touch of doominess in the vein of Winter. The classic Incantation sound to which they have stayed true even to this day. The riffs are still a little bit black metal, with a little bit of doom metal in them as well, and a whole lot of blasphemous death metal riffage that weighs somewhere around 10,000 tons. I'm almost tempted just to go through every song of the album and comment on them, on how precisely they stand out and how awesome they are. All of them point out to the awesome riffs in those songs, and I'm going to look at 4 because of their weirdness and as they stand out even on the album, as they were, as I've mentioned, no fillers whatsoever. The opening track has some of the most solid wall-to-wall riffage of any Incantation song, which is saying a lot. There is a black metal riff that they bust out, and there is a slow section with double bass pumping that some mid-tempo parts under the slow ass riffing. The vocals under the black metal riff can make your hair stand on end. The vocals elsewhere in the song sound like death itself. The instrumental track titled Heavenly Skies is best known for the awesome riff in it. It does just consist of variations of this one melody, but the melody itself captures the very essence of death doom metal. It is melancholy yet not graceful. It is an ugly, misanthropic riff, yet brooding, and can be categorized as melodic. The switches are in, it's very nice, and the entire song swallows up your brain. Now the next track is probably my favourite on the album, and it's Shadows of an Ancient Empire. The track is rhythmic switches in the beginning, and this dense mid-tempo riff which is interspersed with a quicker riff, which has quality of a prophetic seizure. That riff sounds like the March of the Living Dead to me, and that is always a riff I imagine that happening too. The rest of the song goes on to make an awesome mid-tempo chug and always great double bass parts, and some big heavy open chord smashing riff as well. Some really potent stuff here. I highly recommend. I do believe it to be their best, if not then certainly their catches material today. An absolute classic which does not disappoint. Now switching gears, we're going to look at Blood Oath by Suffocation. Now this album hits you right in the face at the start with the opening track. For me, Suffocation have always been consistent. It's so hard to hate every single thing that they've put out since their demo. This album just adds to that consistent catalogue. This album is a little bit faster than its self-titled predecessor. It does its fair share of slow breakdowns, but it has a lot more blast beats. It also seems that Mike Smith has used triggers on the bass drum this time, but it doesn't have a negative impact on the overall sound of the album. Mike crushes everything in his way, and I think I would need to get onto individual aspects of this album so that you understand where I'm coming from. Looking at the vocals, Frank Mullen has classic vocals. They're the same on the self-titled and also on an album like Souls to the Night. Growls, not screams, not as low as before Despise the Sun, but still fits the music perfectly. Also, some of the backing shouts of truth in the song Provoking the Disturbed sound amazing and give that greater repel to the song. And not to forget the re-recording of Martial Decimation, which is perfectly done. Focusing on the guitars, Terrence and Guy never disappoint with their playing. The overall tone of the guitars is a little drier in this album as compared to any other album, but that's something related to the production of this album. The same old tremolo picked parts, insane speed, nice solos, though I prefer the solos on Infantry more than the ones on this one. And the awesome sounding riffs also keep the listener hooked on the album. The bass, Suffocation has the most audible bass ever. Derek is a pure genius, and it's hard to hate what he has done for the band. The bass perfectly complements the Trin guitar attack though. If there were more bass solos on this album, I would have to give it a score. I would have to rate it in terms of percentage 150%. And keeping it short and sweet, when it comes to the drums of this album, Mike Smith will never ever disappoint. Overall, this album defines the sound of modern death metal and should also be a blueprint as to what brutal death metal should sound like. The tracks that stand out on this album for me are Blood Oath, Provoking the Disturbed, Images of Purgatory, and Cataclysmic Purification. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.